linear clock. It is, in fact, I'll just show you what it is rather than describe it. It's just here. Hopefully this board is live. This is going to blow everyone's mind. Very, very slowly. Anybody who can't see it, it's a long thing with two small things travelling along it. They'll get to the end, they'll stop, and then they'll travel just as slowly on the opposite way back. And then, and only then, will you find out what the time in fact is. So this is just, this is the sort of calibration phase of it. It's got some end stops here, and the point is go from one end to the other to measure how big it is at the moment. So it takes into account, oh come on, it takes into account slippage and things on the wheels and things like that. It's not very exciting. It only appears to have stopped. It's not very exciting, particularly not when I'm going to restart it. But that's because clocks aren't very exciting. They just, if a clock, the more exciting a clock is, I would say generally the less like a clock it is. Its one job is to do the same thing repetitively, I mean that's more or less it. You can have cuckoo clocks and things which do other stuff, but they're really toys with a clock face on them. This will work this time. Right. We have clock faces. This is one of the points of this is to have a second look at clock faces. So there are particular times which are associated with a couple of numbers. For instance, 11:47, which is a very exact sort of exact measurement of what the time is at the moment, and is a bit anodyne for that reason. This is a lot more interesting. It's open to interpretation. Is it? Somebody will say, what time is it? You'll say it's 1:45. Somebody will say it's 10:02. Some people will say it's almost 11. Some people might even say it's 11, depending on how optimistic you are feeling that day. Maybe you're looking forward to 11 o'clock. Maybe you're paranoid about missing a train at 11 o'clock, and let's say you'll lie to your partner and say, yeah, it's 11 o'clock. We're going to miss it. Thanks for that. So it is something we can get at a glance. So there's some sort of happy faces. I think it's a happy face. Somebody said it's also quite a sort of devilish kind of face, but who knows? They are literally faces. So there's lopsided faces, which maybe make us feel a bit uncomfortable. All the hands are over one side. It's just not neat. It's a bit untidy. Don't like it. Next one. That's the best one. That's the best face that you can have in a clock. It's neat. It's perfect. The hands are at unity. It's an ideal clock. I overheard a thing on a mailing list at some point about somebody who was confused about why one half of their speedometer dial had a different scale to the other half, and up to a certain point was this size. Up after that point, it used a different kind of scale. And there's lots of theories about why that was. The best one, I have no idea which one is correct and which one it isn't. I suspect it's something far less interesting. But the best one was that this is what it would look like if the scale was linear. If it was purely linear, they just started on this end and went to that end. This is what it would look like. So the speed limit, this is an American car, a speed limit which is 55 would end up like that. And that's fine, except it would lead everybody to be frustrated with that speed, because that's not a neat face. It's not a neat clock face. So they look at that and go, no, wait a minute, I'm always going to try and line this up. Maybe it's to do with the way that you're steering, you're trying to line up with that, or alternatively, you would be trying to steer that way all the time. It's like your steering wheel lines up with the hand. Who knows? So this particular speedometer had a distortion, so that the speed limit for that country was dead center. So all you had to do was keep that line straight. You wouldn't go any faster than you thought. I don't know if that's true at all, or if it is just a nice idea. I don't know if car designers put that much thought into it. I imagine they do. They get paid a lot of money for it. But clock faces have... It's not 12 o'clock, is it? No. Is it 6 o'clock? All right. Okay. That's not how time works now. It doesn't do that. Nice try though. Yeah, I haven't tried this since I've got here, so perhaps I've taken it a bump on the metro. But imagine that it isn't doing that, and imagine that it's doing what it's about to do shortly. So these faces are neat faces. Other faces you can have, they still have meaning. 1 o'clock is when you have lunchtime. You don't have lunch always at 12 o'clock. I think that 1 o'clock has meaning because it is close to 12 o'clock. It is just past 12 o'clock. So you've got time to do something. So I think the faces of clocks do have meaning and do have significance, and you get something from them other than the time necessarily. Digital clocks do the same thing. Things like that are quite nice. Things like that are quite nice. Things like that are quite nice. Things like that are lovely. But none of them are quite as good as just that. None of them are as simple as that. They're all a bit of a conceit. The sort of the digital clock thing, it's a bit clever. And for that reason, it doesn't quite ring true. So I made this clock anyway. It looked a bit like this a couple of years ago, just because I happened to have the bits and pieces to do it, and it was very nice and stuff, and it worked and things. And it was along the lines of a sort of the aesthetic of the little winder's going away there. It's trying its best to do it, but it's not working. It's along the lines of a sort of radio dial kind of thing. So that's the sort of aesthetic that I was going for. And it was purely an aesthetic point. And I kind of did that stuff and I was like, oh yeah, that's quite nice. Okay, let's move on to something else. I'm just going to press that again just so it's doing something. I don't like to think of it just winding itself away there. I don't want it to wear itself out. Recently, somebody got in touch with us and said to me, hey, right, we saw you did this thing a while ago. My son, this was a mom, my son has an autistic spectrum disorder, and he has a real problem with looking at circular clocks, which is pretty fair enough. We learn how to read clocks fairly early as kids, and kind of it goes without saying after that point. We don't do anything. We just take it as granted that it works. That's how it works. But there is quite a heavy cognitive load to do with it. And one of the big problems with it is that it is endless. This is a pro and a con. It is endless. It goes round and round and round and round and round. The hands always travel in one direction. As soon as it goes past 5, for instance, it is heading back round to 5 again. And that, for me, I can see how that can be a bit of a mindfuck. Because how can it be going towards the 5 if it's just gone past the 5? But it's actually a different 5 that it's gone round to. It's gone round to the 5 in the future. But it's still there, it's the same 5. And this is because we attach, we think that a particular position of hands is synonymous with a particular point in time. And that's not the case. It's only synonymous with a particular point in time in the last 12 hours. So that's a problem. The other problem is the singular direction, which means that for half the time, the hand going that way means for half of the 12 hours, the hands are going that way. For the other half of the 12 hours, the hands are going that way. Sometimes they're going that way, sometimes they're going that way. We don't like it. And the third problem with it is 2 axes. We've got the hour and the seconds and the same thing. Both of them are completely arbitrary, which is fair enough. But they are two completely separate meters, 2 completely separate metrics on the same axis. And we've got 2 slightly different hands, which tell the difference. I still didn't do it. Right, so this one, the linear clock fixes that if it works, which it does. When it's not being viewed to many people, maybe that's a new effect. I've only ever showed it to 1 or 2 people before. Maybe more people looking at it increases the load on that. Who knows? Right, so a fix does. That was easy. And that is because the direction only goes in one direction. So time goes forward, time marches forward in one direction. And then when it gets to the end of that 12, it whizzes back to the beginning and starts again. The dual axis thing, fixed that as well. That was easy too. Although I didn't fix it in my first version by accident because I was trying to go for a clever retro look. But in this case, I've got two entirely separate pointers, two entirely different axes. They share a bit of paper in the middle, but that's about it. The one that I don't fix is this one. There's this eternal time thing, and that's. I don't think I've fixed it. I don't think I've necessarily broken it either. I've just changed it so it's different. The problem with it is that when the hands are over there, for instance, let's imagine it was 11:59, then you can't look forward. You can't say, oh, in 4 hours' time it's going to be X time. You can just say, I don't know. All I can say is that in 1 minute's time it will be 12 o'clock. So you limit how far you can look forward. At the same time, you can see back all the way. So you can say 4 hours ago, hey, it was 4 hours ago. So you'll have to forgive me for that. There is no solution to that. I just quite like it because it tells us something about how we use clocks, how we use the faces of clocks in particular, and what we actually use them for. Thank you.